Just a side note, this video does contain spoilers for Astro's Playroom, so if you really care about spoilers for that game, go ahead and click away. If not, let's continue. Another side note real quick, this video was recorded in 30 frames per second, and the game looks a lot better in 60 frames. So if you do watch this video and you do plan on playing it, you'll notice a big difference in quality when you play it. So now that that's out the way, let's start the video. So you bought a PS5 and you don't trust yourself to download Cyberpunk 2077 yet. Well, there's one way to experience what this behemoth of expensive plastic is capable of. A tech demo. Astro's Playroom, the 4th installment in Astrobot's adventure. And needless to say, Astro's really come a long way. Kind of. Now Astro's Playroom's main purpose is to introduce the player to the features of the DualSense controller. Upon starting the game, we're introduced to the controller being constructed right before our eyes, with each and every block lightly vibrating the DualSense, and when these vibrations are done in tandem with one another, and in such a short space of time, man, it feels amazing in the hands. A feeling I can't really describe. Like, imagine a large quantity of low intensity vibrations slowly getting stronger and more frequent. It's quite similar to HD Rumble introduced with the Nintendo Switch, and as expected, the DualSense is able to do this to a far more effective level. After we're introduced to DualSense's adaptive triggers, those adaptive triggers, we'll touch on those later. So we're introduced to the adaptive triggers, the touchpad, the motion sensor, and the DualSense's microphone.
Bro, I'm really about to get your piccochine now, boy.
After all of that, we're finally introduced to the newest generation of gaming. Now one flick of the touchpad and out comes Astrobot. A simple platforming segment follows where we can jump, run, hover in the air for a second, punch, and... oh. And before we know it, we're brought to the CPU Plaza, the hub world for Astro's Playroom. Now we've got 4 computer components around us, and 1 big PlayStation. Oh, what could that be? I don't know. I guess we'll find out sooner or later, won't we? Now this plaza's fine, isn't anything to write home about. It does certainly have some charm. We can punch this, processor? I don't know. We can punch the processor and be greeted with what else can be said but pleasantries. Now the plaza houses the 4 areas known as Memory Meadows, SSD Speedway, Cooling Springs, and GPU Jungle, each one representing a certain component of the PS5. Now starting off with Memory Meadows. Oh, they've certainly nailed the green on the PS5. But if we go back a few seconds, you see those load times. Now, I know this is just a tech demo, but compare this to a simple game on something like the PS4 and it's really snappy. Like, even the boot up in the system menu only took like, what, 3 seconds? Now obviously this isn't something every game is going to be capable of, but it's still really impressive for an entire level to load like this. Now keep in mind, there are no loading screens in these levels, and the only time you'll see a loading screen is when the level ends and you walk back to the plaza. Now we're introduced to these small little like cable ends, and we can pull them to receive coins and other items like puzzle pieces, and the real star of the show, the real star of this game, the artifacts. Now the artifacts are PlayStation items from the past, all sorts of rare pieces of history, modeled and sort of interactable. What are they used for? I don't know. I guess we'll find out later, won't we? Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I don't know. Maybe you should keep watching and find out. The game largely revolves around basic platforming with a few challenges thrown in here and there. Like here, for instance. There's a big cloud blowing harsh winds in my direction, but the wind only pushes me back when I move back. There's no real sense of danger here. I get that I'm taking this a bit too far for a f***ing tech demo, but it just ruffles my jimmies. It really grinds my gears. Of course, this wouldn't be a platformer without some enemies thrown into the mix. Unless you're playing Fez. I mean, I'm not big brain enough to play that. Now, the enemies in this game are almost always defeated in the same way. They don't really pose a challenge, since all they really do is hit you with a bonk. And when they do pose a challenge, like these spiked enemies, which you have to wait until the spikes are gone to go ahead and hit, you can just use your hover beam and instantly take them out, no problem. The only enemies that did pose a genuine threat to me are these ones. Like, look at the range they cover. Like, I wasn't even trying to die for the video, I just wasn't expecting such a large area of effect. Maybe I'm just not as good at video games as I thought I was. Now, while you make your way across these levels, you're gonna notice these expansive landscapes, and A few of these other Astrobots with blue hats and a camera, now keep an eye out for these, as they're always recording something that's a reference to a popular game on PlayStation. Included, but not limited to, Resident Evil, Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, Heavy Rain, Death Stranding, The Last of Us, complete with a clicker, I think, haven't played it, and also Joel and Ellie. I felt really bad after doing that. I don't know if I should put that into the video. Now, there are over 60 of these little references to be found across the game, and, they're cute. There's nothing else to be said, they're just cute. Of course, those aren't the only type of references. There are trophies as well. Yo, is that a meme? Now, the next stage is SSD Speedway, mainly containing artifacts relating to the PS2, and its fair share of peripherals and accessories. And you know what? It's a great stage. One of the first things you learn is how to catapult yourself and release a glider. It's so relaxing to take a good look at the lights while gently gliding through. Unless that happens, and yeah, it does happen sometimes. A majority of this stage, much like the previous stage, is just slightly advanced platforming, except for when you get around halfway through the level. Why? Firearms. Yes, you get one of these partway through the level, and boy is it a doozy. And I'm just going to refer to it as a Nerf gun for the sake of this video showing up on some recommended feeds. The controls for this Nerf gun are as you'd expect. You can just fire with R2. But again, the magic comes with the adaptive triggers. Remember what I said earlier? Now, this is what it looks like when you fire the Nerf gun with R2. It emulates the recoil of an actual GUN to a smaller extent. When you do have the Nerf gun, you can pretty much just go buck wild with it. Slightly hold down the trigger and watch as you fire gumballs at the enemies. There's no real challenge. It's more so here to further push the features of the DualSense and those sweet, sweet adaptive triggers. Cooling Springs is the third level, and we're immediately greeted with ice. Yes, ice, it's December! So we slowly make our way forward, go down the slide, and this is beautiful. I'm not exactly the biggest fan for water levels in games, but if it's accompanied by a beach theme, what can I say? If it says may cause heat stroke on the package, I'm all in. Cooling Springs is definitely my favorite of the 3 levels so far. This level is a lot less linear than SSD Speedway and Memory Meadows. It still is linear, but you just have a bit more freedom and there's noticeably more open-worldedness, if that's a term. The beginning section takes place on a beach. You can explore most of the beach, and it feels much bigger than it actually looks. I should probably rephrase that. Nah, it'll be fine. And like every other level in this game, there are indeed artifacts. What artifacts are these ones? PlayStation. Say it with me. We've had PlayStation 1. It's PlayStation 3, I'm not going to patronize you. But it starts to get real interesting once you advance past the beach. Make your way past the not so suspicious cardboard box and more ice! Yes, ice! And here we have the toughest bit of regular platforming that this game has to offer. Now remember what I said earlier about this level being the most non-linear but still pretty linear? This is why. You see these branching paths. Which path will allow you to advance? The answer is both. There's still a choice to be made here, but at the end of it, they both lead you to the same place. And on top of that, the only difference between the paths are that one holds an artifact, while the other hides a puzzle piece. And that's the end of Cooling Springs. Sort of. You see, there are more to these levels, but we'll get to that after we tackle the 4th and final level in the game, GPU Jungle. Now, GPU Jungle makes me want to retract my earlier statement about Cooling Springs being beautiful. Because just look at this. Ray tracing! It's a buzzword! In all seriousness, ray tracing is important in game design these days, and kudos to you if you're implementing it into your games. I like video games too. Keep at it. Now this stage is a lot more open than any of the previous stages. And I mean a lot more open. A lot more branching paths, and optional areas to explore. And with the way this level looks, there's no reason for you not to explore any of these areas. We're also introduced to the concept of throwing here, though if you explore the CPU plaza, you'll already be well acquainted with the throwing objects you've pulled from the cables in the ground. It's nothing major, you just throw these fuses? You just throw them at the targets to continue through the level, or to grab some collectibles. Now, while throwing is certainly effective as an attack, the real fun part comes when we find another one of these chests. But unlike last time, there's no Nerf gun. Instead, Astrobot equips himself with a bow. And what better way to fit the non-violent tone of this game and to give him toy arrows. See, there's no actual harm, just getting hit with a plunger. So you're having yourself a grand old time with your new bow when Godon from Wind Waker appears and starts taking shots at you. Look at all these cannonballs. Blimey. You gotta utilize the expert platforming skills you've learned up until now. Wait until he reveals his weak points and take them out one at a time. Then you can advance. And that's more or less the end of the level. And by extension, the end of the game, right? Or so you'd think. Remember what I said earlier about there being more to each level? Well, this is what I'm talking about. The second and final sections of a level, there are 4 sections to each level by the way, have us take on a new form in every level. What is this, Kirby's Epic Yarn? Or literally any game with a transformation. That was like the worst comparison I could have made. Now these transformations all utilize a different control scheme. You can use the touchpad to navigate a ball in Memory Meadows. It responds quite well, but I keep finding myself using the touchpad in the same area where the ball would be on the screen. It turns out you don't need to do this, and I'm just weirdly disorientated. They throw in optional routes to find artifacts. Only catch is, there are ice physics involved. Yes! Aside from that, the ball segments are quite enjoyable. You have a nice open field to practice in, so it's not all bad. Up next in SSD Speedway, you're put in a small ship and you have to use those sweet adaptive triggers to start the boosters? I don't know. Push down the triggers and start tilting the controller to move. It controls about as well as you'd expect. Not bad, not great. You can hold down one trigger at a time to manage your movement and speed a bit better, but aside from that, it's just a standard ship segment. It's worth it to use the adaptive triggers though, because you can't get enough of those. The third, and my personal least favourite, is the frog suit. Not that frog suit which makes swimming an absolute joy in Mario 3, this frog suit. You hold down the triggers to charge up your jump. The only thing is, you get distance with a fully charged jump. You don't get height. Again, this is just much more slightly advanced platforming. There are glass panes and other hidden areas for you to find artifacts and puzzle pieces. The final transformation segment in GPU Jungle is definitely the strangest. You take on the form of a monkey, use the triggers to grip onto vines and cables, swing the controller in a weird cylindrical motion, and release the triggers to fling yourself up. I don't know, it's weird, but it's definitely not boring. It's kind of satisfying to just fling yourself from one vine to another. The monkey segments also include these weird rock climbing sections, and you gotta use the triggers to control one of your 2 hands and tilt the controller to reach out for another hold to grab onto. And then bring your hands together on that hold, rinse and repeat. Again, it's not bad, you kind of get into the groove of things rather quickly. It's just a little bit confusing for somebody as smooth-brained as me. And that's it for the transformation segments. All in all, they're nice additions to the game, and they certainly provide different challenges. And that's it, yeah, so I don't really have anything negative to say about them. But that's still not all this game has to offer. Welcome to the speedrun portion of the game. Small levels based off the original 4 of the game, designed to test your platforming skills, as well as your skills with the different transformations. I found myself having a lot of fun with this mode, specifically the one based off Cooling Springs. It's just very nice to pretty much go ice skating. Each one takes roughly a minute, and you always find yourself trying to beat your time again and again. It's a nice little side segment to the game, something to just waste your time on. It's not bad, it's great. I don't know, I'm making it sound like it's terrible. By now you may have wondered, what use do the artifacts and puzzle pieces have? Well, they all end up here, at PlayStation Labo. This is where you're brought to at the end of every level, I just didn't want to spoil it so I could have this section of the video. This is a neat little interactable gallery of all the artifacts you've collected. The puzzle pieces make up a nice mural on the wall, highlighting the key moments in each console's era. And finally, there's the gacha machine at the back. You can spend your hard-earned coins here to obtain figures, more puzzle pieces, and even more artifacts. Definitely something worth your time, especially if you're going for the platinum. And that is the end of Astro's Playroom. Of course it isn't! They just keep throwing stuff at you in this game. Complete all 4 levels and head downstairs to where every Astrobot is relocated for some reason, and you'll find yourself in a strange dark world. Now I'm not going to be showing what happens in this level. This is something that's best experienced by the player, or if you really want to know, you're always welcome to go and find somebody else's playthrough. And that is finally all that Astro's Playroom has to offer. Safe to say, it contains a surprising amount of content, especially considering it's more or less a tech demo. It definitely does well to demonstrate the features of the DualSense controller, as well as those lightning fast load times I mentioned before. And considering that this is a free game that comes pre-installed on your PS5, there's no reason to not give it a try, as well as to get your hands used to the larger feel of the DualSense as opposed to the DualShock 4. It's a charming game, full of little references to previous games on PlayStation systems. The different levels each provide a different atmosphere. Exploring the levels is definitely worth it if you're into that sort of thing. It's a fun platformer to play every now and then whenever you get the chance. Introduce a friend to the PS5 controller mechanics. See their face as they go for those adaptive triggers. What else can be said? It's a great game to get a good feel of what the PS5 has to offer, and what I hope is a great beginning for the next generation of console gaming. And then maybe after you beat that, maybe you can play Persona 5.